And these stress levels are causing us to live in a fight or flight state for the majority of the time. And this is having huge impacts on our health, especially our hormones. And they are the cornerstone for every system in our body. But our female hormones are being affected, and that is having an impact on our cycle, and that is having an impact on our fertility. So, welcome to the 30 Something Shift podcast, the podcast where I support women in their 30s move through the real shifts in life that shape our well-being. I'm Liv, a menstrual cycle, fertility and pregnancy yoga teacher. Here we explore our cycles, fertility, conception and pregnancy through yoga, meditation and real conversations. Do you ever feel like you should be doing more? I'm going to take a guess and say yes, even when your body is asking you to slow down. Maybe you feel exhausted, wired, overstimulated, but instead of resting and listening to your body, we tend to push through, right? As women, we keep going, pushing through because that's what we've been taught and wired to do. But I'm going to challenge that today. And I'm going to say that we need to stop pushing through. We need to learn how to rest, why resting is so important, and how this constant stress and pressure of pushing through is affecting your hormones, your cycle, and your fertility. So let's get into it. Okay, so we're going to talk about why we're stressed, and that may sound really obvious, but sometimes it's good to think about what's going on, because when we're just pushing through, sometimes we don't even have time to reflect on what these things are and why we're feeling this way. And to be honest, we're so used to feeling this way that it probably doesn't even feel like stress anymore. It probably just feels like everyday life, which is quite scary. So the modern world we live in is moving a million miles a second. We can have things delivered like yesterday online. Everything is moving so fast. And with AI and technology, all these things are adapting and changing. And it feels like as humans, we're just trying to keep up, right? But we weren't designed to be. We're not machines, we're not technology, and we weren't designed to move at anywhere near the pace that we're trying to move at the moment. So that is just happening in the world, wherever you are and whatever you're going through. That is a constant pressure we don't always acknowledge that is happening in the background. As women, we carry a lot of emotional and mental load, which can increase our stress levels, especially when we're on a fertility journey. See, it's difficult for anyone involved in this, but as women, we are taking on a lot of that emotional load. And if we have infertility, then we're at battle with our body. We have guilt, disappointment, and that all adds to the stress levels that we feel. And like I mentioned earlier in the episode, this push through mindset is deeply ingrained in society, that we don't just stop because we need to. We stop when the work is done, right? We stop when our to-do list is empty, although it never ever is. But it's that mentality of we keep pushing through and we don't listen to what our body needs, what our mind needs. We are telling it what to do, telling it to keep moving forward. And we're not designed to live that way. We're designed to live a lot slower than we currently do. And these stress levels are causing us to live in a fight or flight state for the majority of the time. And this is having huge impacts on our health, especially our hormones. And they are the cornerstone for every system in our body. But our female hormones are being affected, and that is having an impact on our cycle, and that is having an impact on our fertility. So this is something that we need to be aware of. We need to acknowledge it. And we need to know how to help us get out of that fight or flight state that we're so almost comfortable to live in, although it's not a comfortable state of mind, but we are so used to it. And like I said, sometimes we don't realize we're in it as much as we are. So we're really going to address that today, and ways that we can start to tap into the opposite, which is our parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest side of our mind and body. Okay, so let's get into a bit of the science. Now, if you're a science geek like me, keep your ears perked up. If you're not, please don't switch off. Bear with me. It'll be super quick and it is really interesting and relevant to your female hormones. So we all know that cortisol is the stress hormone and we're supposed to produce this. So it's part of our natural body instinct to produce cortisol when we're stressed and we find ourselves in this fight or flight mode. And when cortisol is released, the sympathetic nervous system is what's kicking in, and this is what we're staying in for a scary amount of time. And going back to the start where we were saying that we're living in this state and then we're on a fertility journey and we're finding ourselves in that fight or flight mode so much more often than is healthy for us. And when you're in fight or flight mode, all non-essential systems will shut down. Because although we're not living, obviously, if you're going back to we're fighting a bear, say for example, you see a bear, we're in danger. This is like our innate kind of reaction that we would be ready to either fight the bear or to run away from the bear. Nowadays, we're getting this same reaction to things obviously not as dangerous, but our body doesn't know any different. So our body is still getting into that absolute essential systems all go, heart's racing, blood pressure's up, ready to fight or flight. And we're staying in that for such a long time. Our other systems are shutting down, and that includes conception. In those moments, conception and fertility is not going to be an essential system that we need to keep going when we're in a fight or flight situation. It's not something that our body needs to be sending blood flow to. It's not something that we need to be prioritizing to survive in that moment. So we're living in a survival mode way, way more than we should be. And it's having a direct impact on the female hormones and the female cycle. Also, when cortisol is produced and the body doesn't have any left, it doesn't go, okay, we're not stressed anymore, we can't produce anymore, so you don't have it. It needs to make more and more and more, and it will keep making it as long as you stay stressed. And what it does, it actually has been proven that it steals a pre-hormone that would go on to make progesterone, which is one of the key female hormones in our cycle, progesterone and estrogen. Bear with me, this is the last bit of science. It will steal from the progesterone pre-hormone to make more cortisol. So that's actually a direct impact on one of our essential female hormones is not being optimized because it's being used to make all this cortisol to keep us in that fight or flight stress mode that we find ourselves in. Stress also causes muscle tension, as we know. Your muscles are holding so much tension. We often feel it kind of in our necks, our backs, but as women, we can hold that in our abdomen, in our pelvis, and that can increase the muscle cramps that we'll be having on our period and during our menstrual cycle. So the stress that we're experiencing and staying in this mode for most of our time is not only having an impact on the hormones, it's also having a physical impact on our muscles and how we're experiencing our period. I know for me, if I've had a stressful month, my period cramps will be a lot more intense and really hard to manage, and I'll have a heavier flow. So to me, that is a direct impact that stress has on our menstruation and throughout the whole cycle. It will then have a knock-on effect to the other phases of the cycle. If you struggle with your period, that will then, it might be longer than normal or shorter than normal, and then it will impact each of the phases that follow. And the likelihood is that stress will be there for your next period. And that is how most of us are experiencing our menstrual cycles when we're living in this constant level of stress. So that is all the science for today's episode. If you're like me, you probably enjoyed it and found it really interesting. All the sources for the scientists that discovered these things are in the show notes too. If you're not into science, then tune back in and we're going to move on from that. So we have 4 phases of our menstrual cycle, and each phase has its own kind of distinct energetic levels that come with it. So We'll be starting with our menstrual phase. So when we're bleeding, our period is when we have the lowest energy. And then as we progress through follicular to ovulation, we have increasing energy. Our energy will peak at ovulation, halfway through our cycle. And then during our premenstrual luteal phase, it will generally start to dip again until the lowest point again in menstruation. But what we're finding is when we're living in stress, we're not listening to these different energetic levels. We're not resting during our period. That's having a negative impact on our luteal, on our ovulation. You may find if you are tracking on a fertility journey that your ovulation day is changing. That is because, like I said, it's like a knock-on domino effect from wherever you want to start in the cycle. It goes round. So whatever part of the cycle is impacted, it will have a knock-on effect on all the others. So you may find that your ovulation date is changing, your symptoms might be different, your premenstrual phase may be longer and harder to manage. You may have more symptoms during that phase. And then your menstruation comes around again, and like we talked about, you haven't rested, it's knocked on impact on each phase of the cycle. You come back to your period, you have worsening cramps, heavier bleeding, and maybe feeling more emotional and anxious because those emotions are heightened anyway. So if we're not resting and we're not listening to our body, we're massively impacting our cycle. That is the key message here today. And the first thing that we can do with trying to manage this is to know how to listen to our bodies. And it sounds really simple, but actually it's something that we've kind of just forgotten to do. Like I was saying, we don't wait to hear what our mind and body need for the day. We decide, our logic brain decides what we're going to get done that day, and we push through and we get it done. Tick it off the to-do list, right? But we're not listening to what our body is telling us. Our body is amazing. It will tell us what it needs, what it's feeling, what it's experiencing. And one of the great ways that we can do this is in a yoga class. You will need to listen to your body. It's a natural thing. It's a beautiful connection of mind and body. Because if you're in a pose and you're starting to feel maybe twinges in your back, you know that's your body giving you feedback that the pose isn't right, you've gone into it too deeply, and you're going to cause injury if you continue. So you pull back or you finish the pose and do something else. That is quite a simple way of saying or showing the feedback that your body gives you and then you responding to it. So when we learn that skill in a yoga class, we can start to build on that and use it in other aspects of our life when our body is giving us feedback, which it basically is all of the time. And you want to reframe listening to your body needing rest. Instead of that being unproductive or being lazy, think of it as giving your body exactly what it needs so that down the line, it has more energy when it needs it and when it wants it. So think of it almost like an energy bank that you can withdraw from later on, rather than constantly being in a deficit, because that will catch up with you and it will make your cycles harder. So it's a reframe really of how essential rest is. And it may not just be rest. Feedback can also be that you do feel energized and that your body wants you to do something. But often the parts that we ignore are the feedback that it needs rest, it needs to slow down. So that's what we need to start listening into. Okay, so where do we go from here? Where do we take this? Starting to acknowledge that we need to rest more. And what I want to make really clear is, rather than adding to your busy day, adding something else that you need to do, what I'm actually saying is we need to take away things. We need to set boundaries, we need to rest more. So this is actually about doing less, not about doing more. There are things you can do, obviously, to reduce your stress levels, like yoga, meditation, a bath, a walk in nature, loads of different things. But today's episode really is about slowing down and reducing the amount of time that we're living in that fight or flight mode. So I invite you to have a little reflection and actually think about how often are you feeling that way? How often are you feeling stressed, ready for fight or flight, on edge, your heart's racing, however you experience it? Just have a quick reflection on how often you feel that way, and you'll probably be quite surprised, and that you're living in that more than you're not living in that phase. And all you need to think about is what is adding to that stress. So is there anything that you can stop doing or reduce doing to prevent that from happening? On your fertility journey, are there strategies you can use to help with the stressful days, with the appointments, with the waiting? Yoga is such a powerful tool to do all those things, but you may be already doing lots of exercise and you're actually like, I need to slow down, I need to stop pushing through and just rest. Just rest. It's such a simple thing, and we're so afraid almost to do it. But learning to rest can be such an important thing and a game changer for you. So it's not always, am I always going to recommend yoga? Absolutely. But it's not always about adding yoga or adding things to your day that relax you as much as it is taking away stressful things and just being able to rest. So that's the real key thing that I want to get across in this episode. And just before we wrap up, think about a place you want to be, a place you want to feel really good. If you can visualize feeling calm, you can visualize feeling content, and let that guide you. Let that be your goal rather than a thing to do or something to achieve. Think of it as a goal of a way to feel. Yeah, because we don't always have control over the outcome. We know that. You can't say, I want to be pregnant by June and do anything to guarantee that. We know that it's such an uncertain journey and it's really difficult when you can't control the outcome. But if you flip that on its head and start setting your goals from a feeling point of view, you can do things to get to that. And that's really empowering. If your goal is to feel calmer every day, you can do things that will help with that, and you can achieve that feeling. And imagine how amazing that would feel. And when's the last time you truly felt calm? When's the last time when there was not much on your mind and you felt really happy and content? It's probably been quite a long time. It's a really difficult journey to be on, even if you're not on a fertility journey. The world that we live in, I can guarantee that anyone listening to this is feeling stressed at the moment, and that they're realizing they're living more in that fight or flight than they're not living in that. So if that is you, let's change our mindset. Let's learn that rest is okay. And let's start doing things that bring us into that rest and digest, that parasympathetic nervous system, rather than constantly fight or flight, adrenaline fueled living that we're doing. It will impact all of your health systems, but particularly your reproductive system and your cycle. The hormones that control your cycle will stop being so impacted. So thank you so much for listening today. I hope it wasn't too much science and that you learned something, take something away from this, that rest is okay. And if you want to learn anything more about your cycle, I've got some cycle aligned classes on YouTube. So you can just subscribe to YouTube and you'll see those come up. If you're listening on your streaming platform for podcasts, then follow along, leave a review if you have time, so that more women in their 30s can find this podcast and start to find some strength and confidence as we move through this crazy, stressful world that we all live in. Take care, remember to rest, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks for listening all the way through this episode of the 30 Something Shift podcast. I really hope you enjoyed it and got something valuable from it. Don't forget to subscribe below so that you get the next episode. They'll be dropping weekly, as well as all my yoga and meditation practices. Take care.